There are. I mean, there are horrible sexual harassment cases and things that you just can't believe still go on. You know, we have instances where supervisors actually leaving, you know, inappropriate messages on somebody's home phone, on their tape, and somebody will take the tape out of the machine and give it to us and say, you know, this is what happened, and we're like, oh, okay, to a lawyer with you. I'm Alice Pritchard, Executive Director of the Connecticut Women's Education and Legal Fund. The Connecticut Women's Education and Legal Fund was started over 30 years ago as a nonprofit women's rights organization. It was actually started by a group of lawyers who immediately began to address employment discrimination issues in the workplace. Sexual harassment has been and continues to be a major issue that our organization addresses, whether it's through providing basic information to an individual who's experiencing sexual harassment, or whether it's through a training to try to prevent sexual harassment before it happens, and making sure that both workers and employers know that sexual harassment still exists and what they can do to address and prevent it.
Well, you know, talking about one of the most common myths or misconceptions about sexual harassment is that women invite it. And I know I've heard this in settings from schools to companies that, you know, if she only didn't dress that way, if her skirt was longer, if she didn't touch the employee on the back, then he wouldn't have felt the need to ask her out repeatedly. And I think sometimes companies believe the same thing. I know I hear it in schools. And I don't know if you've heard that from clients that you've worked with, that people think that they actually have invited the conduct because their skirt's a little too short.
Now I'm thinking of some cases. A case where the owner of the company was the sexual harasser, and in that particular case, his manner of dealing with his female employees was to see all of them, in general, any of the younger female employees that worked for him, in a very sexualized nature. He would refer to them in terms such as, you know, my whore, my bitch. He'd pull them onto his lap. He'd ask for massages, whatever it may be. And I think that was a combination. One, certainly it was power, and it was two, how far could he go and what could he get away with, and was she inviting it? I mean, a big component of what makes sexual harassment is whether or not the conduct is unwelcome. And in order to be unwelcome, you have to have expressed in some way that whatever the conduct is that's at issue is not something that you are, I guess there's no other way to describe it, welcoming. Are you turning away? Are you not participating in that conversation? Are you telling someone outright to stop?
And it's difficult in a situation where the company or the concern's kind of culture is sexualized, and that happens in a lot of workplaces. And you know, sometimes there are relationships between coworkers or between a coworker and a boss, but I think that's where the the HR departments and even the officers of the company really have to set a tone for the workplace, so that it isn't interpreted as one person isn't comfortable, like the woman who is the victim or whatever of the sexual harassment isn't made to be sort of the, you can't take a joke.
It's about a power struggle. It's about not wanting to have a woman in a particular workplace. I'm thinking of, for example, a case I had against a fire department in which a lot of the conduct, she was one of the only, I think she was the only woman on her crew, and a lot of the conduct that was directed towards her was sexual in nature, sexual comments, things done to make her feel uncomfortable, embarrassed, whatever. And I don't believe it's because and there was no evidence that any of her coworkers were interested in her in a sexual manner. It was simply using that type of conduct as a way to make her feel uncomfortable in the hopes that she would eventually leave that workplace.